All right, we have Julian Erosa back on the show. He returns to action February 22nd at CageSport 60. He's going to take on AJ Bryant in the co-main event. Julian, how are you, man?
I'm doing fantastic, brother. I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to get back in there and get in the win column.
As a Red Sox fan, I have to say I'm digging the Mariners hat.
Oh yeah, I'm originally from Seattle, I was born in Seattle, but originally from Washington my whole life. So I'm a Mariners and a Seahawks fan.
There you go. So what did you think of the Seahawks season overall?
You know, they didn't do too bad. I think we almost pulled it off against the 49ers on the second game we played with them. We just made that mistake and got the 5-yard penalty. But I mean, we were a yard away. If Lynch just would have probably jumped it in if we gave it to him. So, but getting that penalty really screwed us. And you know, it was a good. It was a well. Then obviously we lost against the Green Bay Packers. But was that we lost? That's who we lost to, right? Yeah, and then we dropped it. I mean, there was that completion that I think Metcalf dropped or whatever it was. But I mean, there was a couple little mistakes we made on that last drive to try to win it. But you know, that's how it goes sometimes. You know.
Yeah, my NFL
But
season after the Patriots ended after the Patriots lost, so I kind of like stopped watching. I did watch the Super Bowl, obviously, but I was done after that. So let's talk about you and your fighting career. This could be your first fight since being released by the UFC. It obviously wasn't the result you were hoping for in the second go around with the organization. You got some very tough matchups along the way, which I'm sure you were fine with and you wanted from the start. But how would you describe this last run with the UFC?
You know, it's kind of like you kind of getting back into the UFC. You kind of just got to take whatever they give you, and you know, fighting Devontae Smith was probably not the smartest thing for me because he was a weight class above me and he was knocking everybody out, and I made a mistake in that fight that I shouldn't have made. But you know, I just had to take the fight regardless, and if because you know people get cut from the UFC and they don't get called back if they don't accept things. So I accepted that fight, and you know, ended up getting knocked out of that fight, and but I was still positive about being back in the UFC at that point, and then ended up fighting Grant Dawson, and that was a good matchup for me. I loved that matchup. I ended up getting a ear infection like a week before that fight, and once again, I didn't want to be with the guy that pulls out, and so I just kind of stuck with it. I was taking antibiotics at the time, and usually my cardio is kind of like one of the staples of my fighting ability, and one of my strongest assets is my cardio. And in the third round, I had nothing for him. You know, I felt like the fight was, you know, relatively, good on both sides. I mean, I felt like we both were doing stuff. Was throwing the takedown in the beginning of the fight, getting up, and then in the third round, I couldn't even feel my arms or my legs anymore, but was able to stick in the rest of that fight. And, you know, that was kind of a disappointing situation because, you know, there's guys who pull out for injuries left and right, and I should have done the same thing. But I was worried about getting cut because of, you know, pulling out of a fight and having them be like, oh, well, if you don't want to fight, then we're just not going to have you in the organization anymore. And so I took that fight when I probably shouldn't have, and ended up losing that off of a ear infection. You know, anything can happen. I'm not taking anything away from Grant Dawson. He could have won that fight if I was at 100%, possibly as well. So regardless of that, they actually cut me again, and then they re-signed me within like a week period. Like they cut me after the Dawson fight. That's what my manager said, and then called me back like a week or two later and was like, they're gonna give us Julio Arce on May 18th, I think it was, and I was like, oh hell yeah, I'll take anything. I figured I was done with the UFC, and with the Arce fight, winning that fight, I was 100%, good weight cut, everything was good. And I felt like I was winning that fight. The first two rounds I thought I had under the belt, and then and not to say I wasn't gonna try to finish him, I was always trying to finish him the whole time, and then I ended up getting caught with a head kick, and just good on him. You know, he's a good striker, and he was able to land that. But I really felt like I was frustrating him, and I could even hear his corners. They were talking like Julio, get what's going on? Like let's get in this fight. And I just felt like they were getting disappointed and frustrated, and I felt like I was doing a good job of that. And you get caught, people get caught, and a shin to the head is difficult to take and just walk off. So and good on him. And the UFC, you got to be winning. So losing 3 times in a row is not good for your resume, and which kind of sucked for me too, because before this, the only time I'd lose one time, and that was it. I never lost consecutively, and this is the first time that's ever happened to me. And so, but I've taken a decent amount of time off and just kind of reevaluated what I've been doing, and want to just take a little bit of a break. I felt like I was in 3 fight camps back to back to back, and so having a bit of a break and just kind of refocusing and fighting on one of my hometown shows. I probably like 75-80% of my pro fights have been on CageSport. So
Right.
it's one of those places where I feel comfortable. It's kind of my hometown, even though I'm kind of Eastern Washington, but it's nothing but love for the Emerald Queen and the CageSport fight organization, and they treat me well, and they're always willing to have me back. And it was difficult to get a fighter to commit to this fight. Nobody wanted to fight me, and AJ Bryant stepped up. So props to him for doing that.
So after you were cut after the Dawson fight, and then they brought you back a couple weeks later for the Arce fight, did you have to like sign a new deal, or did they just cancel the release, so to speak?
I think they just canceled the release because I originally my manager told me that I was cut after the Dawson fight, and so I was already on my mindset thinking, oh well, shoot, I gotta try to find a different organization to fight for. I was looking at a different paths I could take, and then he called me a couple of weeks later saying they offered me to fight Julio Arce, and I think maybe he had, they hadn't fully taken me off the roster because uh, Jason told Sean Shelby that I asked him just to keep me on the USADA. That way, if anything did come up, if they needed me short notice, all my blood work, everything would be on point, and all my drug testing and stuff would be on point, so they could just plug me right back in. And so I think it was like a kind of a weird buffer period of time where it was I thought I was cut, but possibly maybe was still on the roster. But I think their plan was that I was cut. But then if they needed me short notice in the near future, they were going to have me available with all my drug and all my physicals and blood work and all that kind of stuff.
So you've been in this game for a long time. You've had 30 professional fights to this point, at least what we see on your record. And obviously you wanted to get back to the UFC, and you did that. Was there any part of you after the Arce fight that thought, I've had an amazing career. I've done a lot. I've got to the UFC twice. I was on the Ultimate Fighter. I could leave with my head held high. Was there any consideration to being done with MMA, or were you just like, nope, let's just find the next thing and let's try to get back?
Well, it's difficult to take fights and to lose fights, multiple fights in a row, which is always like, I always feel like it's weird. Like when I see people have records that are like 15 and 30, where they're like journeymen just fighting every weekend and they're losing all the time. I like, it takes a toll on you mentally, physically. And not only that, like, I don't care about myself. Like I would fight every single day for pennies just because I enjoy doing it. I mean, we basically do that in the gym as it is. And so it's like, it's something I enjoy doing. The thing that bothers me is how it affects my friends and family that watch me. I mean, shoot, it's brutal to watch, your husband or your son or your best friend get knocked out cold and, get helped up and, taken away to the hospital. My family had to fight, they don't know what's going on. And, it can take a toll on them. And that's really what takes a toll on me, is how it affects other people, not how it affects me, because it's part of the game. I've been hitting the head hard enough. I've been knocked out. I've been, I've taken probably more damage in the gym than I've taken in a fight. We train so hard and, and so continuously. It's like, 2 times every day, even when I'm not having a fight, it's like I'm training continuously, and I'm not really like, I'll take a little bit of like time off in the sense of like I won't be doing 3 a days, or maybe I'll go to 1 practice or 2 practices and take it a little bit easier during those practices if I don't have a fight. But still, it's you're doing it almost every day, and so for me it's something I love. But for friends and family, it's difficult for me to put them through that over and over and over again. And so there was a consideration, like I need to figure out possibly what I want to do after fighting. I'm 30 years old. There's I would say the shelf life of a fighter is, mid 30s at best, especially at the lighter weight classes when you're talking about people that rely on their speed and their quickness. When you're a heavyweight, I mean, you guys fight until they're fucking, 45, 50 years old sometimes. So for me, I see myself, mid to late 30s at the latest, fighting, and trying to transition out of it into something else. But, I still love it, and I can't see myself not fighting as of right now. Maybe in a few years I could see that kind of happening, but still, I'm still pushing for it. And so obviously I got to get a couple of wins and try to figure out I don't think the UFC is necessarily 100% done with me. That's what my manager said, who was Jason House, which is one of the best managers in the world. And he said that they're still not possibly done with me, which I thought was absolutely incredible because I'm like, man, they've like hired and fired me so many damn times. Like, of how many different things and how many times I've been in the UFC. I mean, even including with the Ultimate Fighter and Contender Series and all that shit. So, like for him to say that he's all like, I talked to Sean Shelby and he said that he wasn't 100% done with you, and I'm thinking, holy crap! Like, I mean, like that's crazy to me. So, like, even having that door open still is pretty cool. But I'm kind of looking at other or bigger organizations as well. I think it'd be nice for me to like hop into something else as a fresh face versus hopping back in the UFC and having the stigma of people, talking crap like, oh, he's on, he lost his last 3 fights with the UFC and his record's 1-4 with the UFC. Like, he's horrible. Like, that guy shouldn't be fine for the UFC. So, trying to maybe make a name for myself somewhere else, at a relatively big organization, whether it's Bellator or ONE FC or the PFL, or, there's other options out there for sure. But hey, if the UFC called me today and they told me to fight tomorrow, you better believe I'll be there. Anybody would. Any fighter that's willing to, or that loves what they do will be there in a heartbeat. I mean, that's obviously the mecca of fighting is the UFC and the most, mainstream organization. So people want to fight for them. And but for me, as of right now, I just focused on getting this fight, winning this fight, and then moving on and trying to make a name. Even if it's back in the UFC or whatever it is. But I got to find those building blocks and climb the ladder of getting back up in there.
Did I see that not only do you have this fight in a couple of weeks booked, did you book another fight for March as well? Is that accurate, or is Tapology and some of those sites wrong?
Well, the whole thing with that global knockout, I fought for the global knockout in between stints with the UFC and beat Eric Sanchez on their card, and it was a great card. I enjoyed global knockout. It's Jackson, California. It's a nice show. It's kind of small, but you get a lot of those alpha male guys over there. So you get some tough guys you have to fight because Jackson is like an hour from Sacramento, like 45 minutes. Like, so you get a lot of like tough dudes from over there. And I fought Eric Sanchez, who's an alpha male guy, and did really good on that show. I TKO'd him and bloodied him up and stuff. And they gave me fight bonuses. They gave me $2,000 cash in bonuses. I was like, holy crap! I didn't realize small regional shows do cash bonuses, but they did. So that was cool. I almost made double my paycheck because of that. But they had signed me to fight again before this fight, like a couple of months ago, maybe like 2.5 months ago. I can't remember the exact date. I think it was October, maybe November. But I was supposed to fight Sam Toomer on Global Knockout, and they had posted me as the main event. I'd signed the contract against Sam Toomer at 145 pounds, and 5 days before the fight, they told me Sam Toomer had pulled out, and I was all like, "What the hell is wrong? Like, what's going on?" Like, because I was signed to fight Sam Toomer when I fought Eric Sanchez as well, and he pulled out then. And so I was like, "Man, this kid keeps signing contracts against me, and then keeps pulling out. Like, what's the situation?" So I wanted to go on Instagram and just message him myself and see what was going on. Like, I was like, I wanted to make sure that I don't run into that again. I don't want to sign that contract with Sam Toomer if he's going to keep pulling out. So I go on his Instagram, and it said that he is glad to be back in the gym like a day before. And I'm like, back in the gym? Like, we're supposed to be fighting. Like, how are you not in the gym? Like, how are you just back in the gym? So I messaged him and asked him about that. I said, hey, as of today, I thought you and me were scrapping on Saturday. Like, says you're back in the gym. Like, what's going on, man? Did you even like sign a contract, or were you even like planning on training or fighting me, or what's going on? He said that he had already told Global Knockout a week prior to me signing the contract that his back was messed up and there's no possible way he was going to fight. And then I heard through the grapevine that they just put me on the poster to kind of sell it up because I'm a UFC vet. And me and Sam were the only big fight on that card. Everybody else was just random guys that regional guys. Which don't get me wrong, those guys can sell tickets too. But obviously having a UFC guy in there is gonna pump up the fight card a little bit more. And but he said that he had already said no 100% to Global Knockout, and that they were gonna actively look for an opponent for me. But I never got any offers from any other opponents the whole time. So how are you actively looking for an opponent if I haven't heard of anybody? I guess right at the end they offered me Jamal. I kid already fought before on Contenders. I fought him. He was
Jamal
13-3.
Emmers.
Yeah, Jamal Emmers. They offered me him. I'm like, I already knocked him out on Contenders. I'm not gonna fight him on some regional show for pennies now. I'm like, that kid's more of a dangerous fight for me than I thought Sam Toomer was, personally. And so I was like, and I heard about that like literally like, and even my manager had turned it down before he even asked me on that fight. But that was the only one they offered me. A guy I already fought before. I'm like, this is stupid. So, and my mom had bought tickets too. We spent like $700 on tickets, and a bunch of friends and family had flights, hotels. They had to cancel. They got cancellation fees, and then he almost didn't refund my mom for those tickets. I had to get on his. I had to have Jason, get on his ass about it, and because if they were gonna be, weird about the ticket thing, I was gonna show up and make weight and get my show money and be like, hey, I signed a contract. You better have my show money at least. And but things didn't escalate to that point. He paid me back. I paid my mom back. That's all I really cared about was paying my mom back for her ticket money. I didn't care about anything else. I didn't care about having to cancel my own hotel, whatever it was. And then so then a little bit later, they said they wanted to rebook me against Tony Kelly's, and I said, well, I really want to try to get on this February 22nd card at CageSport because it's my hometown, and it's actually a memorial fight for my old coach who passed away, Rich Guerin. And so so I was for sure, like, I was going to do everything I could to get on this CageSport card. And if that fell through, because the last couple of CageSport cards I've been trying to get on, but nobody will fight me. And so I said, if that falls through, I will fight Tony Kelly's on Global Knockout. But if I do get a fight, then we'll kind of play it by ear, because I haven't even signed a contract at Global Knockout against anybody. So I haven't signed a contract, and I'm on the poster as the main event. So I'm like, whatever, Global Knockout strung me along for so long, and I had a fight camp I got ready for. I was cutting weight at the time. I wasn't cutting weight, but I was water loading. I had been dieting for, however long it was. And, I was getting my body down, and it's not a fun thing for me to, it's not enjoyable living when you're, dieting and training really hard. And, there's a little bit less of enjoyment of life in the process of fight camps, And so they strung me along until the last minute and just to sell tickets. And so that was kind of shady of them. And so for me, as of right now, if I win this fight, come out unscathed, maybe I will take that fight. But at the same time, maybe I won't, and maybe I'll string them along a little bit because they've kind of screwed me. So, if you're gonna do that to me, don't feel bad if I do it to you. And possibly after this fight, I might just tell my manager and be nice and just let him know, a month beforehand, hey, I'm not fighting anyway. So at least they'll have some time to get something together. And but honestly, for me, it was, and the guy running the show or whatever, I tried messaging him about the tickets, and he was ignoring me, and he was just being weird. It was weird because like the first time I fought there, he was such a nice guy, and really enjoyed. I got fight of the night. I got a TKO and a fight of the night bonus, and so I know he liked me. They enjoyed me being there, and I told him anytime I'm not contracted with anybody else, if they have a fight, I'd be interested in looking over details and stuff. So I don't know what happened, what went wrong with that. They were just possibly being a little stingy about it and shady, and so. And that's kind of how it goes with these small organizations. You got to be on your toes about it. And I wish I would have just messaged Jamal beforehand, or maybe he would have messaged me, because he obviously seen that he was on the poster. And I think they just told him like, hey, we're going to put you on the poster, but we're just going to actively look for an opponent for him. And I think he just thought they must have told him that I was okay with it, but I had no idea. So, it's kind of a shitty situation, And I never like to throw anybody under the bus, especially like organizations that I have fought on, because it was a good one. They never did me wrong until then. And so, but at the same time, it's whatever to me. I as long as I was gonna get a CageSport fight, I was cool with it. And then maybe I will fight that Tony Kelly kid, maybe I won't, who knows. Maybe I'll find something else, or maybe after this win I'll get to Jason House can work his magic, and maybe I'll get into a big organization again. So I gotta take it by ear after this fight, but that's obviously the only thing I'm focused on as of right now is just this fight, getting through it.
I know you, like you said, you were having a hard time finding an opponent. You couldn't get a fight, but AJ Bryant steps up to the plate. He's 11-4, California guy. Did you know much about him when he was offered to you, or are you just happy that you had a fight?
Shoot, I don't even know much about him right now. Honestly, I don't know much about him at all. And at the time, I was like, I obviously looked at his record. He's 11-4, and it's a pretty outstanding record. It shows that regardless of who he's fought, it shows that he comes out on top more often than not. And shoot, I was 12-2 at one time when I was coming up, and so that's not too far off from his record. So I know he's had to beat some guys and probably some decent guys, but when I checked his record out, wasn't too impressed with like his situation. He's fought a lot of the middle of the road guys, and the last couple guys he fought had more substantial records and were better guys. But I think he failed some of those tests. He's lost to some mediocre guys, but he also lost to some better guys. But the one thing I did check out on his record that really like intrigued me was that 3 out of his 4 losses were submission, and I've never been subbed in my entire career, and my jiu-jitsu is really underrated because people don't really kind of see me use my jiu-jitsu. I'm more of a stand-up guy, but I have a lot of submissions because people take me down and they end up getting subbed. But I feel like in this fight I could be more of the bigger, stronger guy and maybe kind of bowling him to the ground and get a submission. But you can't look past anybody. I mean, there's guys out there with losing records. Shoot, I lost to Artem Lobov, and that guy was like 11-11 or whatever it was. He had a 50-50 record, but he was just a guy who threw bricks, and he caught me with one of those bricks in it. And so anything can happen. You can go out there and you can get cracked and you can get knocked out. You can get caught in a submission. I mean, there's anything that can happen. I mean, I can walk into the cage and trip and break my ankle, and if I could be over, who knows? And so, you can't look past anybody. But looking at his record, initially I was like, oh, he's 11-4. He's probably pretty. He looks like a stud. And then, once I kind of looked into his record a little bit more, I noticed that a lot of his fights were, middle of the road. Guys that were like 5-2. Maybe 8-4, kind of guys that had like, not the best win. I mean, guys that were winning records, but not like the crazy, not like undefeated guys where he's like, smoking dudes that were like 8-0 coming up or, stuff like that. Once you start seeing guys that are, kind of smoking those dudes, then you got to be a little bit wary because obviously if they're beating some of the top guys, then they're legit. So, and I'm not saying this kid's not legit. I just think he's a level underneath me. And if I play my cards right, the win should be there.
How do you get this done? I mean, you think the submission's going to be there, but maybe not a prediction per se, but obviously you're going to have the experience heading into this fight. You've been under the lights, you've been with the UFC a couple times. You've fought tougher competition than him. I'm not saying anything out of term here. It's just look at the records. You can see what it is, but obviously you're going to have a big target on your back being who you are, and he's going to be as motivated as ever. What do you hope to accomplish as a martial artist, as an athlete in this fight at CageSport 60, outside of just getting your hand raised?
Yeah, I really want to just showcase my ability to, take the fight anywhere. I want to be able to really work in some of those transitional things instead of just being a stand-up guy. Obviously, if I'm in a fight and the stand-up's going, really well for me, then obviously you want to kind of keep it that way. But even if that's going, my way, I still want to make him work and make him, as uncomfortable as possible. And I feel like, having a guy who's the majority of his losses are submission, then I feel like him being on the ground is going to be as uncomfortable for him as possible. And so in the fight, I feel like he's a guy that, if he's on his feet moving around, he's going to feel comfortable. And most fighters are like that. If you're on your feet moving around, you feel comfortable. I mean, we do it all the time, every day. And so putting him on the ground and putting him in positions that he, feels like he needs to be more defensive than offensive is kind of really what I want to, what I'm aiming for. I want to make him, I want to make him look, as like an amateur compared to me. I want him to be worried about me taking him down, submitting him, and knocking him out all at once. I want him to be really having to be aware of everything instead of, maybe I feel like some people thought I could have been possibly one-dimensional at one point in my career where I was just, always just trying to knock people out, and then they maybe take me down, and that's the only time I'd ever get submissions. But possibly, taking him down and working my ground game with him because I don't think I shot one time on anybody in any fight until my first UFC fight. Even in the Ultimate Fighter, actually, you know what? In the Ultimate Fighter house, I did a shoot on Abner right at the end of the third round. But that was literally the first time I'd ever taken a shot on anybody in a fight after 10 amateur fights and 16 pro fights and 3 Ultimate Fighter house fights. So never doing a takedown ever. People probably thought I was more kind of one-dimensional. So kind of adding layers of my game is what I'm looking forward to doing.
Julian Erosa takes on AJ Bryant February 22nd, a little under 2 weeks' time in the co-main event of CageSport 60. Julian, appreciate the time, man, as always. Before we let you go, and I appreciate you talking so candidly about different things, let the folks know where they can find and follow you on the web, social media, any shout-outs, anything else you want to get off your chest. The floor is yours.
Yeah, you can obviously all my social medias on my Instagram is Julian Erosa 3. My Facebook is just my name, Julian Erosa. I also have a fan page, Juicy J, on Facebook, and then shoot, I don't even know what my Twitter handle is, but you can probably look, you can probably figure that out. Uh, yeah, I want to shout out to my sponsors. I got a guy in his name's Russ. He's from Yakima, my hometown. He sponsored me for this fight. Also, shoot, huh? Oh yeah, my the DJ at my wedding, he's also sponsoring me. His name is Big Earn. He's a fantastic DJ, one of the best. And then uh, Atlas Clothing as well. They just sponsored me recently for this fight. And then I want to shout out to Rich Guerin because he was our previous coach who passed away a few months ago, and so this is kind of a memorial fight for him at CageSport 60. So shout out to him and his family and his wife, and they've been like a family to me as well. So shout out to them, and shout out to Brian Hallquist Productions and CageSport, man. We're always glad to be there and fight on the card.
Thank you very much for the time, Julian. All the best to you next Saturday night, and hope the Mariners have a good season for you as well.
All right, I appreciate you, brother. You have a good one.